Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Bricks King podcast, where I'm going to bend your ear about LEGO, review those amazing bricks and plastic, and discuss what is new and up and coming around the LEGO world. I'm your Minifigure host, Matt. Let's bet on it. Welcome in, everybody. How are we doing? Episode 195. I know we're getting so close to the 200 mark. Today we're going to talk about some Technic stuff, and would you believe it has been like a 2-year hiatus since we've really talked anything Technic specific from my end. I know we have had Dan and April on to do some Technic stuff in the past, but this is completely different. This is uncharted territory for the most part. I think in the first year, in the first season of things, we went through some Technic stuff. We did, but it was different back then. It was just getting the feet wet. Now it's like, you've not done Technic in so long. Do you know what you're doing? Yes, we do. Anyway, so we're doing Technic today. I'm excited to talk about 2 of these sets that are currently available to you guys, one of which I had probably more fun than I have had with any set to this point in time ever. Not just Technic, ever. And I'll tell you why. And I've got a guest on that is going to share opinions as well. And, we'll just kind of go through it and we'll talk about just a little bit at a time. So the first thing up that I wanted to talk about is the Technic Heavy Duty Excavator 42121. This thing has 569 pieces and it retails for 40 euros or 40 bucks here in the United States. I will tell you this. I have not driven this excavator, but if you have never had an opportunity to drive heavy equipment, especially an excavator, there's got to be somewhere that you can do it. There's got to be a place where you can pay money to be able to do it. Or if you were in a fortunate enough position that I was as a young kid or a teenager at that point in time to be able to drive one, oh my God, it is one of the most exhilarating, weird, fun experiences of your life. And then if you have it as a job, obviously it's completely different. You might be like, you know what? No, at that point in time, I'm working. I don't want to do this, but it is a lot of fun. And I've got to say, this Technic set really lives up to what the ideal excavator looks like, what the tracked excavator typically looks like. So some of the features that come with this, you obviously have the tracks that are on the tires and they are independent and they rotate very smoothly, whether it be forward or back. There is a lot of play here in the tracks, which is good because sometimes when LEGO does tracked vehicles, not on the Technic side, but just in general, they become a little too tight in their tracks and they end up, it becomes a little bit too difficult for them to roll across multi-surfaces. Now, these are the small tracks. These aren't the big chunky plastic tracks where you sometimes have to put the little rubber eyelets in. You don't need that here. This will go across carpet. This will go across tile. This will go across hardwood. It'll go across the grass. I was outside playing with it in the grass. It was a lot of fun, actually. It reminded me of a much smaller version of a Brooder toy. If you guys don't know what Brooder, the manufacturer Brooder is, they make toys that are awesome. They're made out of plastic. They're made to resemble real-life vehicles, and they just have a plethora. They are really cool. They're a lot of fun to play with. I know, sorry, it's the 10-year-old, 8-year-old jumping out at me at the moment. This thing also has a 360-degree turntable that is on it, so this thing does rotate around completely. Not just 290 degrees, not just 270 degrees, the whole way around, which makes it a lot of fun to be able to play with. It is perfectly balanced so that it doesn't matter how you have it seated. It is not, leaning forward or leaning back. Even with the arm extended, the boom extended, it still works really well like that. One of the things I did notice, though, as far as the rotation, the spinning of the section that goes 360 degrees, depending where you are putting pressure, it does catch on the tracks. So you just have to kind of be a little bit gentle. Don't push down on it so hard. Just give it a nice, gentle little push/tug, whatever, to be able to get it to move to where you want it. The build, I will tell you this, the build was very simple for a $40 set, obviously. it wasn't super difficult. It wasn't something I was like, oh my God, this is so taxing. How am I going to do this? No, it was Technic, a lot of pins, a lot of axles, that kind of stuff. And, you attach all that and eventually you get through it. It's not the end of the world. So obviously it's an excavator. This thing has a boom arm that does extend. And there are 2 spots that are able to give you that movement. First off, you have one that allows you to drop the main boom, and I'm sure this is a specific name to it. I can't quite remember these days. Anyway, but this goes from the main body upwards. There's some gears that are in here that obviously you're using. There's some interesting Technic pieces. I say interesting because I'm not a Technic aficionado. But there are Technic pieces in here, such as like drive linkages and just gears and stuff like that you're using to be able to accomplish all this, plus the cylinders that are used, not pneumatics or anything like that, just plastic on plastic. So what you're doing is this lifts up and down. It has a gear at the back that you just hand rotate up and down. You can put a motor to it. I didn't put a motor to it. I didn't really see a reason to. But it does have a little bit of play in it. So when you do lift it up, it does either drop a little bit or pull up a little bit and then drop back a little bit because, there are tolerances that are in the plastic. The other one that is on if you are looking at it from the front, it is the left side. You're looking at it from the rear, it is the right side. And what is going on there is that it is extending your actual boom digging arm. It's retracting the bucket, extending the bucket. Now, here is the problem that I have with this. The bucket, here's what I would have preferred. I would have preferred to have 3 separate knobs. Why separate knob? Why separate knob? Some of you will get that. The rest of you will be like, what is wrong with you? With that in mind, had it had a separate knob to be able to retract the bucket and extend the bucket, it would have been better because the problem is when you are digging, and I know Jang had done this in his video in the past, and I watched that and I was like, oh, I'm not going to like that when I come across it. The bucket doesn't scoop very well. If you're using this as play, this is a $40 set. This is a play set, essentially. This is something you're going to play with. This isn't really something that kids are going to really put on a shelf for the most part. I would imagine that is not the case. So having something that does have a boom, that does have a bucket, that does have that extension in there to be able to close the bucket more fully than what it does is much more important. There has to be a way that has to be done. At a $40 set, I'm not going to complain all that much. I'm just saying it is something that definitely needs to be adjusted. Now, if you were going to spend your money and buy I think it's $450, right? The big one, the big massive digger, then that's a different story. That's got the bells and whistles out galore. That's not something I'm really into. Kids aren't going to be into that as far as a playset. Most kids aren't going to have an opportunity to have that. So being able to have something that does dig, does scoop, is a huge deal. And I just think the mark was missed just ever so slightly here. I hope in the future that is something that can be just mildly adjusted. Even if it, let's say it bumps the price point up to $60. That's still not that bad of a deal. That is still a solid deal for something that is play function. You could take it outside. You can dig in mom's garden, right? You can take it and dig on the schoolyard. You can dig at, softball fields. I grew up on the softball fields as a kid because my dad was always there during the weekends for tournaments and during the week and stuff like that. That dirt is soft as can be. You could dig forever out there. It's so much fun. So I like the idea here. I know this isn't a Brooder vehicle. I know this isn't a old school Tonka vehicle. I know this is a Lego vehicle. I'm saying you could really suck in the population that is really into this kind of thing. Kids that might put their pennies elsewhere, you could really suck them in because they're getting 2 play experiences. They're getting building, creating it, from scratch. And then they're also getting to be able to play with it. And they could also modify it if they so choose. Now you can say, well, you can modify the bucket and make it close how you want it. Technically, yes, I could. Absolutely, I could. My brain is not technically Technic. It doesn't function under the Technic umbrella. It doesn't. It barely functions under the system umbrella. And those of you that met me at, Nebraska Brick Days are probably like, yeah, the man is definitely not a mock builder. But that aside, I just wish that bucket would close in more tightly, would close further than what it does, scoop further than what it does to be able to scoop up. Because you do get Lego pieces that you can use here to be able to scoop up like you are digging up some things and stuff. It just doesn't quite work that well. All you're really doing is just dragging them towards you. You really never get a solid scoop. On the boom, this thing does have some lights that are on it. Not real lights, obviously. They're meant to look like lights. There's a bunch of stickers that are all over this. Obviously, it's got its branding as far as its engine and stuff. Just stickers everywhere. There are no printed pieces. Now, I will tell you this. I was very curious. So the cab here is locked in by Technic pins. Not a big deal. It's something we expect. It's got a transport light, an amber transport light on the top of that. But it does have a brick-built seat in there. Tiny, albeit, and it does have a screen in there. And I thought, you know what? I wonder if I could get a minifig in here. You can, but you have to take out the screen that is in front of it. You have to take the screen out that is in front of the seat to be able to get a minifig in. What I actually did is I took out the pin that was used here, and I pulled the windshield glass piece straight down, pulled that out, the screen out completely, put my minifig in, and you can manage to get their hands within the controls, the hand controls that are on each side, because I'm assuming that's how this is being controlled, at least in this model. So, and then you flip your glass back up. You can technically do it. You can. It just takes some minor modifications. So I know they don't do Technic Guy anymore. They don't have their Technic, I don't even know if you could call him a minifig, but they don't have the Technic human thing anymore. So a minifig is the next best thing, and being able to squeeze that in is always a good thing. So aside from the fact that the bucket doesn't close ideally the way I would like it to and scoop ideally the way I like it to, I would say this is probably a 7 as far as a set goes. And some of you are going to say, whoa, that's harsh. I shouldn't have to modify something to be able to get it to do what it should already be able to do. I understand the minifig stuff. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the bucket. I'm talking to be able to actually dig and use that. That is a big thing. You do get some brick-built cones that come with it. I don't think brick-built cones, these are red cones, which is odd to me, but brick-built cones are not going to sell this set. That is not going to sell a child that is walking down the aisle and say, oh my God, I've got to have this because it's got brick-built cones that are going to sit out where I'm taking. That's not going to happen. But you can always transport your cones as well. There is a spot that you can double stack them up and just, carry them along with you. I like the set for what it is. A $40 value, I think, is fair for the most part. I just wish the bucket would close. So let's move on to the next one here. All right, before we jump into this next one here, we are going to take a quick commercial break. I'm going to get some water, rest my voice, and we'll be back in a moment. So the next one we're going to talk about here is the Jeep Wrangler 42122, 665 pieces, and it is a $50 set. This thing, if you have not checked out my social media yet, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, I think it linked over to Facebook. You need to do so, and here's why. My son and I built this thing. We came up with this ingenious idea that was like, you know what? Let's see what happens when we drop it from varied heights. We started dropping it from a foot, and then 2 feet, and then 3 feet, and then from the top of the counter, which is like 4 feet, and then 5 feet, 6 feet. We're like, okay, we need something bigger. Mind you, at that point in time, we had lost almost minimal pieces, maybe a tiny chunk here or there. When I say a chunk, I mean maybe like 3 or 4 pieces that were still attached together. Maybe. I don't even think we really lost anything. Some things came loose, just click it back into place. So we came up with a brilliant idea. In our home, we've got 2 stories, obviously, because in Texas, we don't have basements. They don't do that thing here because the land is crap. However, with that said, I say, you know what? Why don't you go up there? Let's measure and see how high this is. It's a 15-foot drop from the top of the railing on the 2nd-story balcony down to the floor below. 15 feet. So before we get to that story, because I'm going to make you wait. Let's talk about what the set has to offer before we destroy it. So as a $50 set, this thing was a really cool build. It's got suspension. It's got the ability to turn, obviously, as most of these Lego sets do. It's supposed to be an official Jeep Wrangler Rubicon that is going on here. The front steering is a little it's not as tight turning as I would have liked it, but for being more of like a toy, it's not a big deal. The turning for the steering, the front steering is in the back in the, I guess what you could say, the rear cargo compartment. So this thing does have a roof rack. It's got independent suspension. It's got a winch on the front, and that winch is very strong. It is just a string that LEGO uses with a hook, and it can be wound in. There is a gear there that you can use to wind it in nice and tight after you're done towing whatever. It's got a really bulky bumper on it, by the way, which is really solid. The engine compartment can open. There's some stickers in here for the engine. You've got some stickers all over the place for its branding. I mean, you've got them on the side, on the hood. You just got them everywhere. But what is interesting is I did not realize this was going to come with printed pieces. The printed pieces that are used here are in the front for the grille of this Jeep. If you know anything about Jeep, the manufacturer, their grills are very distinct. Everybody can tell a Jeep from the front of it immediately. Like, oh, that's Jeep right there. Yep, sure is. And that's what this shows you immediately. You've got these big bulky headlights that are in the front, which are nice. I wish they were able to be turned on. Obviously, they're not. They don't look so great from the inside of the frame because you do have Technic axle pins that are sticking through there that kind of stick into the wheel well area, which is kind of wonky, but it's not the end of the world. Moving back, you have the suspension in the front that can move left and right, and then your steering that can move. I'm sorry. Yeah, your suspension can move up and down from the left to the right, and then your steering obviously moves left and right. But there's a whole lot of play in there, which is really cool, and it's a really interestingly designed area with the gearing that is used in there. I really find that very intuitive in the way that it was designed. I know the Technic guys are a whole different breed, just like the Star Wars guys are a whole different breed. It was just a lot of fun. So underneath, there's really nothing to see. It's kind of boring underneath. On the inside, you've got your doors that can open. You've got your steering wheel, your faux steering wheel, because it really doesn't do anything. It rotates up and down, and you can actually spin your steering wheel just ever so slightly, but it doesn't actually move because it is locked into place, but it gives you the feeling that it does. There is no gear shift in this. Obviously, you're not shifting gears throughout or anything like that, but I like that the doors open and stuff like that. And here's what I found really interesting. The mirrors, the left and right side mirrors, actually open and rotate when you open the front doors. So the front doors, the passenger and the driver's side doors have a lot of movement in being able to open up. That's really, really interesting. It's not something that I quite expected, but you can open that up and the mirrors move along with it, which is kind of neat. You can move the mirrors independently, but then when you open the doors, the mirrors move as well. So that is really nice. I do like that. Moving on to the top of this, you have some lights that are up top for your roof rack. Your roof rack is just there. It's not really meant to do anything. You can look at it as more of like a roll cage. You have a yellow roll cage that is in here, which is kind of nice. And I do like the way that is done. On the back side here, towards the cargo area where you're going to be putting all your junk, you're going on a road trip or whatever, you're going up in the mountains, you're doing your stuff, you're off-roading and everything like that. You do have an area here that is kind of open and be able to be used as, I'm going to throw all my crap in here, or you can kick up the back part of this and use it essentially as what is supposed to be more like a secondary seating area if you've got another person that might be back there or something. I'm not quite sure how Jeeps work necessarily, but I'm assuming that's what they're going for. It does have the black roll cage that is continuing back through here. I do like the way that's done. That essentially just hides your steering mechanism for the front wheels, which you could probably hear it, maybe not. But either way, that is what is going on there. The wheel wells for the front and the back are done really, really nice. There's a lot of clearance there for the movement that you get in the suspension, which is really nice. The rear suspension is very, very, very heavily built up. It does have spring-loaded shocks that are in here. You can move them independently, or you can kind of push up if you have enough pressure and push up one at a time. The stopping pieces that are used here on the Technic side of things to stop the suspension from moving, having any more travel, is okay. It does limit what you can do or what kind of poses you can get this thing in, or whatever kind of weight you want to impose to it as you're playing with it, or maybe staging it for a photo. And then back towards the back, you do have your rear tail lights as well. You have your rear bumper, which is in a similar fashion, similar color as in the front. There isn't really anything that is really sticking out and saying, you know what, this is ugly, this is hideous. It is Technic. So you do have to keep that in mind. Absolutely, you have to keep that in mind. If you look at this thing from a distance, you're like, that is a pretty cool vehicle. It's a really fun vehicle. It's something you can play with. I took it out in the grass. I took it out in the mulch. I'm mowing over plants and stuff like that. My wife's like, no, stop it. Hey, I got to do what I got to do. I got to put things through their paces, and I need to know, can this hold up against brush? Meanwhile, I have a bunch of thorns in me from the rose bushes. With that said, you could theoretically put minifigs in here if you want. Your minifigs are going to be dwarfed by this. Entirely different than the last set that we talked about. But this is a cool set. If you're a Jeep person or you know a Jeep person, this would be something that would be pretty cool on a shelf as a collector piece. Just different kind of collector piece. Maybe you put this in your Jeep. You're like, hey, I'm going to put this. This is going to be my dash ornament. Maybe that's what you're going for. I don't know. As a whole, I had a lot of fun with this. The tires are really cool. They're really large, chunky tires. They could have been bigger because they would have fit. I think LEGO could have made them in a size a little bit bigger, used a little bit bigger rim, and they would have come out even better. It glides. It plays well. It's fun. If this were an RC vehicle, you would have a blast driving this thing around, put bigger tires on it, you make it into a monster truck. There's so many different things that can be done here just from this base model. And I really enjoyed it. The build, we built it up twice, and the build was simple. The build was unique to what you're building. Obviously, it's Technic, but specifically because of what it can do with the things that open and close and things that can maneuver about. So I did like that. Now, is this worth the money? Is it worth the $50? Yes, I do think it is worth about $50, maybe more along the lines of 40-ish, maybe 45. You have some really large pieces here. You got the really large tires, the really large wheel wells, some of the really large Technic plastic pieces that are used here versus what we just talked about with the excavator. I know it's about a 100-piece difference and a $10 difference, €10 difference, but at the end of the day, what it comes down to is you are getting more plastic. It's going to cost you more. So as a whole, I really do believe this is probably a solid set for anybody that wants to play or not. Now, in the beginning of this, I talked about Brooder, and I talked about that kind of comparison to the most part. Are kids going to gravitate towards something like this? That $50 price point is still in that housing area for children to be able to play. Maybe not 5-year-old kids, but definitely some of the older kids. Is this going to be something they're just going to build and display, or this, are they going to put it through its paces? I put it through the paces. We put it through its paces in more ways than one. I think if you are trying, and I'm not saying that LEGO is doing this. I've mentioned this before. If you're trying to compete and steal away stuff from the manufacturers that make toy vehicles, this is pretty good. This is a pretty solid idea. This is a pretty solid design to be able to do that. And here is the thing. What happens when this thing breaks? You can put it back together. You can't do that if you drop another Jeep, a Brooder, from 15 feet. You can't put it back together. Now, granted, that thing's going to have more detail. It's going to cost you probably an extra $30. But you're not going to be able to put it back together because it's solid plastic. It's not pieced together like this is. So let's talk about that. I told you guys, this monstrous behemoth thing turned into a pile of rubble. And to help me explain that, I brought on my wild and crazy, almost 12-year-old Finn, who has not been on the show in a long time. Finn, I'm glad you could come and join me and tell everybody how wild and nuts we were.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
It was wild. So we took this Technic model, and I already told him, I said, you know what? We decided, let's just drop it from a bunch of different angles and see what happens. And we decided to drop it from 1 foot, 2 foot, around the counter height. And what happened?
It took minimal damage.
Like minimal, almost nothing. So then, was it you or was it me that was like, let's drop it from up there?
Oh, that was you.
Of course, it was probably me. Yeah. So we decided, okay, let's drop it from 15 feet. right?
Yeah.
How many times did we do it?
4 times.
We did it 4 times. You're right. So we did it one time and then put it back together. And then we decided, let's drop it and see what happens if we drop it 3 times in a row, how much damage we can take.
Yeah. It did not turn out well.
It did not turn out well. It was, you know what though? It held up better than I thought it would.
Yeah. For being Technic, it's pretty strong.
I thought it was going to die.
I mean, it did for the most
It
part.
did eventually die. Okay. So we took it up. I was like, Finn, here, take it up there. You walked up the stairs, the 18 stairs to the top. We measured it. We're like, all right, it's 15 feet. And I was like, wait, hold up. I need to take a video. Yeah. So we dropped it the first time. The first time, what happened?
So, like the wheels came off and part of the roof, but that was it.
It was almost nothing. Wheels, not a big deal. Are you still, if somebody's in the vehicle, they're still safe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're totally safe. It's not a big deal. It's like, oh, hey, I'm alive. So then we're like, oh my God, that was so much fun. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
So we took it up again. You took it up again. I got my camera out. I'm like, all right, we're going to record it again. And then you dropped it again. What happened?
It split into the front and the back.
It split into a few pieces. It was still alive, though. It was still alive. It was still a vehicle. It didn't quite look the same. But what they may not realize if they haven't seen the video is we almost killed an animal.
Yeah.
We almost killed Leo.
He's fine.
He's fine. Look, don't call PETA, folks. It's okay. He did not die. He did not get hit. But the video was hilarious.
Because he went, brakes!
Like, he put on the brakes hardcore. I'm not moving. I'm scared to death. And it looked closer than what it was. It wasn't like within inches of his face or his head. It was a few feet away. He just happened to come around the corner looking at me, not realizing something was going to fall from 15 feet in the air.
Yeah.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah, that could have been bad if it hit him.
He wouldn't have died, but it wouldn't have been pretty.
No.
Your mom would have been mad at me.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. So then we gather her up. We say, you know what? We'll give it one more go. It's not completely dead yet. It may not be able to drive on the road or in the mountains.
Yeah.
You take it back up there. We roll the camera. What happens on the last time?
It completely shatters.
It shattered. I think we only had, now I'm holding, this is a visual bit, but I think we only had like a handful of a chunk left of the set.
Yeah.
Everything else went under the couch, under the drawer centerpiece we have down there. Women, I don't know what, you probably know what I'm talking about if you decorate homes. It went into the bathroom. It went into your mom's office. It was just everywhere.
Yeah.
And even I think the next day, was it the next day or was it later that night? Your mom's like, hey, I found a Lego piece.
That was the next morning.
It was the next morning. So what did you think about the experiment? Now, okay, tell me what you thought about the experiment.
So I thought it exceeded my expectations for being Technic of that size.
I did not expect it to hold together. I'll be honest. I thought after the first time we dropped it from 15 feet, it was going to be dead.
I didn't exactly think that, but I didn't know how well it would do either.
I was impressed. And then we're like, let's do it again. Let's do it again. It's like when we went on Batman at Six Flags. We're like, let's do it again. That wasn't enough. Again.
So fun.
So I know we're off topic here on a tangent, but so after that, we decided, let's put it back together.
Okay, I did.
You're right. You did. You put it back together. I did not. Just to make sure that everybody is clear. You can call it child abuse, whatever you want. That's fine. You put it back together, but as a whole, this thing is pretty rad.
Yeah.
Obviously, it can't do a whole lot of things that some of the other bigger sets can, but it can take a punch and keep moving. I mean, that thing fell 45 feet and it still held together pretty well.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think now I'm curious. I think this is going to have to be a bit. I think we're going to end up having to do more Technic sets in the future.
Oh, yeah.
And see what happens when they get dropped from, let's drop it from 5 feet. Let's drop it from 10 feet. Let's drop it from 2 feet. Let's drop it from 30 feet. Obviously, it isn't going to be here inside the house. It's going to have to be outside. But
yeah,
I'm curious to see what can happen. Now, there were no dogs hurt in the making of this, I promise. So if you have not checked out the video yet, it is on social media. Go look at it. Go laugh. Go watch oh my God. And then be like, oh my God, the dog is still alive. He is. He's still wild and crazy. Those of you that know me, he's still alive. So as a whole, Finn, what should we do next, Technic, that we could experiment with and see what happens with it?
I don't know. It could be all-terrain. It could be like a race car, sports car, that giant excavator.
A giant excavator? You want me to drop a $450 set from 15 feet?
Yeah.
Ugh, my head and my heart hurt. Okay, we could drop it inside, not outside.
Yeah.
Because I think if I were to lose one piece outside in the yard,
You'd never find it.
I would probably cry. But with that said, thumbs up or thumbs down for this set?
Definitely 2 thumbs up.
2 thumbs up. 2 thumbs?
Yep.
That's pretty impressive. So that's going to wrap up this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun to build Technic, play with Technic, put it through its paces, especially from 15 feet in the air. And maybe, just maybe, if I feel up to it, we will maybe decide to drop the excavator from 15 feet and see how that turns out. It probably won't be as pretty. I can almost guarantee it won't be as pretty. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you are interested in checking out Technic, even if it's not something, hope it at least entertained you. And like I said, if you have not checked out the videos on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, please go ahead and watch them because it was hilarious, especially when Leo, his name is Leonidas, we call him Leo or Mr. Lee. So check that out. He nearly died, but he didn't. So with that said, we are coming back tomorrow with another episode, and then we will be back again with another episode the following day. So 3 episodes this week. And as always, I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's build on it.